as you are with me now on what is page 6, we advanced a little bit. Take a look. I've got a sample set of community agreements there that we can build upon and revise. I'm going to read them aloud so you can hear them as well as see them. And then I'm going to invite folks to add to that list. You could either directly add by, tapping after the last one on the Google document, just like I did here, adding a couple bullet points if there's something that comes up to you, or you could type a suggestion into the chat. So think about this as our launch space, and we can add and adjust as feels good to this group. So as you engage in our learning together today, please be mindful of our community agreements. And here's our starting spot. First, keep in mind that we are all learners and we're all doing our best, right? Professional learning should be, in an ideal world, a space where we can bring our knowledge and our vulnerability and try new ideas and grapple with new concepts in a judgment-free space. So as much as possible, lean into that welcoming of yourself and your colleagues as a learner, giving everybody that opportunity to try. The chat function for our purposes in these sessions is a designated place to reach out for individual help if something isn't working and to connect with one another as we learn together. But absolutely, if you experience any technical difficulties or something isn't working, please let us know so we can help. We want to make sure that you can connect with the learning that we are giving in these sessions. Third, let's approach teaching, learning, and student support with a growth mindset. So many new hills of ideas to climb as we're in this time of COVID. And so let's just hold in that growth mindset approach. Let's start from a place of belief in student capacity and success, even though that can be challenging at times when we're grappling with something in our classes, holding that idea close to our hearts. It is helpful to ask questions and to say when something is confusing, just as we would encourage from our students, encourage that in one another and give ourselves permission to ask when something is confusing. Everyone should have the opportunity to share, and this requires the community to share the airtime and honor discussion protocols. So if we have open times for discussion, right, think about that and think about how can we share that space. That might mean that some of us who are a little quieter might take a moment to share what they're thinking, share those good ideas. And those of us who are verbal processors might take that moment to step back and be an active listener first, right? Open up the floor a bit. And when we're in breakout rooms, just honoring those discussion protocols to make sure everyone has a chance to share. It's okay to try something and change your mind or go in a new direction. I have to remind myself of that one often, right? Especially if I've worked on something for a while, it's hard to let go and try something new. And a little time for processing and reflection before moving on can make a big difference. And you'll see that worked into our time together in some stretch breaks or just close your eyes and mental process breaks for a minute to keep the learning manageable. As you look at those, what can we add? What feels like we could revise it or something else you've seen modeled in another session we should add here?
Could I maybe add something? Perhaps encourage conversations and practices that lead to more equitable grading. I'm not seeing equity in here.
Totally. Can I, encourage, I'm going to ask you to say it again just to make sure I get it exactly like you said it.
Encourage conversations and practices that lead to more equitable grading.
Love it. Love it. Absolutely. Absolutely. Keeping that idea of equity as one of our determinants for the choices that we make in how we approach our grading. Love it. Yes, and what else should we add to our list? So this is a working document, just like everything else that we do. And I find often that the longer we're together, the more new ideas of what we want to layer into this may crop up. And so if, as we're learning together, you think, oh, you know what, we're doing this thing and we should we should codify that thing by putting it into our community agreements with each other. It's a good thing for us to keep in mind, or let's go back and do that again. It's working so well. Just pop it in the chat or raise your hand and let me know, and we will add it to our list of community agreements as we go. With that, let's go ahead and head over. We're going to go down to page 7. And on page 7, you're going to see what I would call some backwards design questions. Anytime that we're looking at building knowledge with a group of students or practitioners, right, there's usually a range of different experiences and knowledge and approaches that are coming into that group, right? We occupy such a broad range of knowledge in this group together. And so what you might be seeking from this session may or may not be the same thing as your neighbor within the Zoom screen is seeking. So those questions represent sort of a broad range of ways to think about how one might spend some time building knowledge as it relates to grading through the time we're going to spend together. So you might be coming with a question like, you know, what are the options and necessary steps for organizing and using my gradebook online or in Canvas, right? Really thinking about how to use those technical tools that are part of our everyday lives now, right? You may have a more student-focused question as it relates to Canvas, right? What do my students see when they look at their grades in the Canvas gradebook? Or maybe stepping a bit more into that space of the theoretical, thinking about grading and how it relates to student learning, right? How does what my students see in the gradebook impact their experience as learners and influence their next steps? Or you may be more in that design space of thinking about your grading, and you might have a question something like, how can I examine the connections between my gradebook design and student equity and success? Or if I'm curious about changing some element in my grading design, how does somebody even start that? What does it look like to try and consider some revision to what can feel like a really interrelated set of systems that sit at the heart of one's grading practice? So what I'd invite you to do is to take about 1 minute. Feel free to leave your screen on or turn it off, whatever feels good for you. And let's use this as a sort of stretching and centering break. Look at those questions and think about sort of where are you in what you're seeking with this session? What's right at the pulse? Is it wanting a little bit more from Canvas? Is it wanting to think a little bit more about your existing practices and those theoretical spaces of student learning? What feels most important for you at this moment? Kind of stretch into that, and then we'll get ready to build some knowledge together. All righty. So on top of stretching, feeling all of your limbs come back to life after all the sitting on the computer that happens, looking at those questions for a minute, I'm going to invite you to do a little bit of looking and a little bit of choosing as we get into page 8. Again, acknowledging the range of reasons that we come to a session like this and the range of knowledges and experiences that we have. One of the first steps we're going to take together in our learning is what is called a text set, which is a choice that a designer can make, a teacher can make, to set up a number of different avenues into the learning for the learners. So what you'll see on page 8 and on page 9 is a cornucopia of potential inroads to thinking about grading. And I would suggest that you think about what feels most important and necessary for you right now and make a choice in that direction, knowing that you'll have access to this Google document and you can come back to any and all of these resources later. So think about what feels most necessary, start there, and then you can always branch out from there. The way to look at what your choices are for reading, and you're going to have about 10 minutes to read, I'll talk more about that in a minute, is that the left-hand side is organized into what I would call more theoretical texts. So There's foundational readings, right? Some great places to start a journey into thinking about that relationship between grading, pedagogy, teaching, and equity. So there's a number of different possible readings there. And if you've done some reading or done some work in that area and you're like, that's great, I've read some of that stuff, I want to level up a little bit. There's also next step readings on grading approaches for equity that are down below. If what feels right at your pulse right now is a little bit more hands-on how-to, right? You're getting into that Canvas gradebook, you're trying to figure out how stuff works and what that's going to mean for your class. Your home is on the right-hand side in those how-to guides. And there are several over there that you can look through. Some of these will be quick reading, so you might be able to look at 3 or 4 of these during that time. There's an overall how-to book, Canvas guide for grading, and then there's some more kind of drilled down specific how-to guides beneath. There's also one that I've made that's over there called Nicole's Guide for Students to help them access grades and feedback. That's worth a look, even if that's not your first goal for today, because it's also takeable. You can absolutely take that, share it, and just give it to your students. You don't have to redo anything with it. You can rename it if you want to, but it's yours. Just give it to your students. It tells them how to see stuff on their gradebook, which is not intuitive in Canvas. We'll talk about that more later. So all of those sort of how-to guides are on the right. The theory behind grading stuff is on the left. What I would invite you to do is needle around in whatever speaks to you for about 10 minutes. And when we do reading together in a text set, it's really just sustained time to read, right? In the company of other amazing colleagues. So there's no completion agenda, there's no pop quiz, right? There's no goal that you have to start something at the beginning and read it all the way through. Whatever speaks to you, go there. However you want to read it, do that thing. It's an opportunity for you to build some knowledge. And then we're going to do other learning activities to follow to then help bring that knowledge into application. So with that, I invite you to take 10 minutes. If one of the links doesn't work, if anything gives you trouble, let us know in the chat. Yes, Sharon, you can share that guide with your math department. You can share it with your neighbor. You can share it with whoever will take it because it makes it easier for students to see their grades. And that is gold. You betcha. You betcha. So yeah, take 10 minutes. You can leave your screen on, turn your screen off, whatever feels good. And I will let you know when you've got about a minute left. Enjoy your reading. Okay, colleagues, so I'm going to invite you forward, thinking about whatever you read, right? Whether you read a how-to guide, and that's got you thinking about grading, or as I saw some conversations in the chat about organization and maybe what that means for you as the designer, what it means for your students when they're looking at the gradebook, or if you read one of those more theoretical articles, whatever that might mean. On page 10, I want to invite you to take a couple minutes, about 3 minutes or so. And on the left-hand side where it says reflection, maybe just let these questions guide you. Share something about what you read, right? So either something that stuck out to you, something interesting or thought-provoking, or if you'd like a little further nudge, there's a couple of questions there. You could think about, what do we mean when we're talking about grading? What did that article suggest? Is involved in that process of thinking about grading, thinking about student learning, or insights, takeaways, points of contention or connection. What struck you when you read? What's something that got you thinking? Had it over there on the left. After you've got your ideas down, the right-hand column is an opportunity for you to give feedback to someone else. So I would invite you to take a couple more minutes on the left, add in some notes. What did you learn from what you read? What struck you? And then when you feel ready, take a look at what your colleagues are adding. And you can give them some feedback over on the right. And I've given you some language prompts to help with that feedback. You can frame your feedback in an appreciation, right? I appreciate this, or this is interesting to me, or an I wonder, right? Keep the thinking going. Add a question, or I notice, right? Just adding to the learning through observations. So what I'm hoping you see as you look at this table, right, is one is the wealth of knowledge we can gain from each other, right? If we had conversations about grading more often with our colleagues, right? If department meetings connected to conversations of student learning had room for a conversation of how assessment in terms of individual course things that students do, ways in which grades happen, was a dialogue that was as rich with learning as it was potentially with compliance with something, whether that's making sure your assessment reports are in on time, for your college, or meeting certain department requirements, that there's just so much we can learn from each other when we open up that space. I also hope that you're seeing as you look at it that when we talk about grading, we're talking about several different things, right? We're talking about the relationship between student learning and demonstrating of skills and how we give credit. But we're also, in this case, talking about like, what the heck do I do with Canvas and how does that work? And how oftentimes I find with grading, Canvas makes my job twice as hard, right? I had a system, I thought it was working, it was going fine. And now that I'm using Canvas Gradebook, getting Canvas Gradebook to understand what I want to do is maybe more challenging. But I also find that it's inviting me as a user to rethink what I assumed was working great for everybody that maybe actually wasn't working so great for my students, but I didn't know that because I had an Excel sheet and my students didn't interact with my grades every day, or because I had a different way of doing things and Canvas is giving me that opportunity to step back and look at it and go like, do I love this as much as I thought I did? Maybe it's a great time for me to consider what other options are out there and how might I make that work within the environment that I'm in. So as I move us forward, I'm going to do a little bit of modeling for you. I noticed a lot of questions about gradebook organization and sort of how points happen and how we do those mathematical calculations and all of that. And so that's where I'm going to be going and modeling. And we'll kind of take it as we go. I'm going to model a couple things and then see where your questions are, and that will help lead us from there. My primary goals with modeling, because this seems to be what folks are looking for when we're talking specifically about Canvas Gradebook in these sessions, is talking about how to organize assignments in the gradebook, questions about, having everything as one category or weighted categories or groups, how that works. How to create a supplemental category in the gradebook for external content, whether that's something that you're assessing on an Excel spreadsheet that's coming in, which is a real pain, and other ways you might want to think about doing that, or whether you have, a lab or some other external place where things are assessed and you need to bring those grades in to assess them. How to help students interact with their version of the gradebook, and just some additional opportunities for you to use Canvas to look at, observe, reflect, and revise your grading design based on what you see and what feels like it's going to work for you. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And then I'm going to take you into Canvas. And Rebecca, I'll have you man the chat. And if something comes up, if there's a hot potato question, lots of questions around it, just go ahead and interrupt me and we can
Yes, ma'am.
Sounds like a plan.
Indeed.
Okay, y'all. So this is where it starts to look a little bit like a baking show in our session together, because this is one of my sandboxes, which means it's not a real course, which is good. That means I can show you lots of stuff related to grades and not be concerned that you're seeing student information. But it also means that it might look slightly different from your class on the ground because it's not real, right? So if something looks weird, let me know and we can go from there. I'm going to start not on the grades page. We'll get there. But some of the decisions you need to make about your gradebook, at least in terms of how it mathematically functions, happen on the assignments page. So if you go to assignments, it's on the left navigation tab. You're going to see something that probably looks pretty familiar, right? Which is a scrolling list of all your stuff. So when you have a new Canvas course, it defaults to making what I would call one giant bin, right? So imagine, you know, a very attractive storage bin that you got from somewhere, right? That can hold lots of stuff. And Canvas says, look, let's give you one and we're just going to call it assignments. Okay? So when you open up a new Canvas course, it defaults to having one bin. That bin is called assignments. But you don't have to keep it as one bin. Okay? In the one bin world, when you put stuff in there, when you put assignments in there, everything has the same weight. So the way in which you make it have a higher impact on the final grade is that you make it worth more points. Right? Canvas's gradebook system, although you can measure in percentage, works on a base system of points. So if I put 10 assignments in this overall bin and I make 9 of those assignments worth 10 points and I make one of those assignments worth 600 points, the thing worth 600 points is going to drive the majority of the final grade, right? So one bin, everything takes up the same amount of space at the start. How many points you give it drives how much it weighs or how much it impacts that final grade. You with me so far? Making sense? Either give me a thumbs up or a nod, some sort of encouragement, because this gets a little technical as we go.
Yes.
Cool. All right. All right. Good. You're with me. Okay. Because here we go. We're going to get a little bit more technical. So let's say that you might be like me and you're like, you know, when I had an Excel spreadsheet, I put stuff in different tabs or I put stuff in different columns and you know, my grading system's still out of 1,000 points, but I don't like everything in one bin. Canvas says that's okay. You can have lots of bins, right? So if you want to make more bins, you go up to this button over here. Up at the top, there's assignment plus assignment in blue, but then to the left of that, there's this plus group. And if you hit plus group, you can make a group, think, or a category, right? A place where assignments go and you can name it something. So if you have a syllabus, right, that organizes the grading into, you know, you've got minor assignments and major assignments, or you've got quizzes, or you've got, you know, however you do it, unit 1, unit 2, whatever you got, you can make a name for that kind of divider within the big bin that you want to make. So let's say I call this minor assignments or homework, you know, whatever. Add that. And I choose save, and Canvas is going to drop that new bin down here at the bottom. Okay, so you can make as many of these as you want. And then what you can do is if you've already built some assignments, you can just drag using those 8, you know, dots on the left and drop those assignments into the bin you want them in. For purposes of understanding how this impacts final grades, when you make a group, a new group, you title it something, all you've really done is made dividers inside the big bin, right? Everything is still occupying the same weight to start with. Just because I put an assignment in the quizzes doesn't mean it influences the final grade more than something in homework simply because it's in the quiz bin. If I want it to influence more, I make it worth more points. So it's 35 points versus 25 points. That 35-point thing is going to influence the final grade more. Okay, so if I want a really basic grading system, that's how I do it, right? I can either have one big bin and everything just lines up, and then the more points something is worth, the more it influences the final grade. Or I can add additional groups, and that's like dividers in the bin. And that helps me separate stuff for my own purposes as a designer. But the same rules apply. If I want it to impact more in the final grade, I got to make it worth more points. Okay. But let's say I don't know exactly how many assignments I'm going to have over the course of the semester, or I I want Canvas to do some of that math for me, and I don't want to have to work things down to a half a point or whatever, I can choose to weight these bins, these groups. And in order to do that, I come over to this set of 3 buttons on the right next to assignment. I click on it, and then I can drop my mouse down to the second choice, which is assignment groups weight. When I click on that, Canvas brings up this box, and this box is a stop and think box, and it's a useful stop and think box, right? Which is like, hey, wait a minute, are you sure you want to do this? Because it is going to affect the math in your course. And so if you say, yes, I want to weight the final grade based on assignment groups by clicking this box, then all of your bins show up. And so once all of your bins show up, it's got to add up to 100%, but you can decide maybe that you want quizzes to be worth 10%, no matter how many quizzes are in that bin, no matter how many points you make those quizzes out of, they're not going to affect the final grade more than 10%. Okay? No matter how many homework assignments there are, it's not going to affect it maybe more than 5%. But maybe those timed exams are a big deal in your class, so you want those for 75%. And then Canvas will let you know if your math doesn't work, right? 170% doesn't work. So then you're like, oh, shoot. You back that off, you know, whatever it might be, until you get to 100%. So something I want to make you aware of, I'm trying it out in my class. It's new, but there were some questions in that sheet. Some folks read Jesse Stommel's article on ungrading, and there's some various other ones in there about giving students the opportunity to practice without penalty, right? Creating homework assignments that, that don't impact the final grade. And so there's 2 different ways to do that in Canvas. One of the ways is to put those activities into a bin that's weighted at 0%. Right? So then they're in this bin, they're not affecting the final grade. You'd certainly want to communicate with your students clearly about that choice so that they know that those are practice assignments, but that's one way to make that happen. The other is, depending upon the type of assignment, you can either check a box that says do not count this towards the final grade. You can set up a practice quiz, so it says practice right in the name, or you can make an ungraded discussion. So those are all ways in which you can create an activity in Canvas that doesn't impact that final grade. So just food for thought. It's an option for you that's there. Once I hit save, if I've done everything I'm supposed to and I want my weighted categories, I'm going to see my percentages over here on the right. So I can see what those bins look like. So no matter how many activities are in there, the total amount of influence it's going to have on the final grade is the percentage I have identified for it. So I'm going to pause there. I'm going to check the chat. So Laura, it always works in points. I'm using that word weight just to explain the total impact on the final grade. But Canvas is built from a point system, so you bet, you bet. Okay, are we ready to look at some more stuff? Feeling good? All right, let's go tackle that gradebook and that organization, shall we? Let's go there next. So let's go to gradebook. And let's take a look there, because I know there's some burning and itching questions about how to get Gradebook to look the way we want it to look. So one of the most irritating things about Canvas is it will let you do more things than it will actually maintain for you. So you can take these categories and you can move them around, but Canvas is just going to put them back. And that's really disheartening. You can change the view for yourself of how they're arranged by going to this middle column, but your choices are relatively limited. So if you go to the column that says view and you drop down to arrange by, these are the options you have available. Whatever the default order is, I'm not sure what that is. You can go assignment name A to Z or Z to A. Due date, oldest to newest, newest to oldest. Total amount of points for that activity. And then you can do modules. I typically default to having my gradebook organized by module because that's how my students move through the class. I use modules as weeks, but that might not work as well for you. It may work better to have due dates or assignment names.
Nicole, can I ask a question?
You bet.
So I like to put all my tests first and then some of the smaller assignments following. And I have not found a way in Canvas to be able to do that. I know you can customize. And when I drag drop and put the test columns first, it doesn't hold that position, or at least it didn't seem to until I assigned a grade to it or something. But when the students take their tests, it's part of a module. So obviously some of those tests don't show up until later, but I want to see them side by side so I can look at a grading pattern.
Right, right.
How do I get Canvas to hold the columns where I want them? And then the other issue is downloading them to Excel. The titles are too long. And then I have to keep changing the heading every time I want to update the grades in Excel. And it ends up being so much work, I can't do it.
The download to Excel is laborious, no question, because you get that full sheet and you get all those titles. So the longer that your titles are on your assignments, the bigger and more unwieldy that download becomes, for sure. In terms of the exams, because your choices are somewhat limited, I mean, you can move them around, Lynn, but they're not going to stay unless it's one of these patterns that that Canvas has given. So you could kind of make a workaround, and you could title those by assignment names and put, you know, like a letter A or a letter B or whatever at the beginning of your quiz titles, so that they show up at the beginning of the alphabet and then arrange that way. I was going to suggest you could put them in a module, but it sounds like your modules are organized in another way, so you wouldn't want to monkey by having those all in one module, because that would be another way to get there. So I'd probably suggest attempting to use one of some method of numeric or letter organization to keep them all at the beginning. I think that idea was suggested in the chat as well, right? Somebody suggested that maybe using some creative naming as a way to get that. Yep.
I did that, and it was the only way I could get it to work and keep I want quiz 1 next to quiz 2 next to quiz 3, and that's not the timing of it, but I wanted to be able to see them in those orders. So I just put a little A and so forth.
Ooh, so thank you. Thanks, Lucy. And Rebecca's also saying that her understanding is that the default order is the same that they are on the assignments page. So before you sort of rename everything, Lynn, give it a try. Try creating a separate group and remember, a group by itself doesn't change the weight. It's just a divider in that bin. So maybe try creating a group, putting it at the top of that assignment page, move that group all the way to the top, and then move your quizzes up into it and see if that default order reflects that. It's worth a try before you rename.
Okay.
Okay,
that
two
makes
questions,
sense in
Nicole.
terms of getting it in the Canvas gradebook positioned correctly. But since quizzes don't count as much as tests and so forth, how, because I had mine weighted like 75% of the grade comes from lecture, 25% from lab. Can I maintain that? And
Yep.
how would I creatively create these little bins?
Well, you know, part of your question, I think, is going to be easier if we can look at it more in depth. And I want to be respectful of our time for that individual question. So part of my answer, I'm going to say, let's email Lynn, and we can look at that together to make sure I'm respectful of the group's time. My brief answer would be to say, just as a reminder, the amount that you weight a category doesn't make it decide to be at the top on that Canvas assignments page. So the short answer is you could decide that what you put at the top is weighted at 20%. And what you put later on that assignments page is in a category that's worth 70%. That's not going to necessarily affect its order on that page. And if what Rebecca said is true, that default order is literally by what geographically is on the top of that assignments page, that might be worth trying first to see if it helps create some of those solutions. You can always make a separate category for the quizzes versus the exams if you want to. So I hope that's a starter, and I'm going to pop my email address. It's on the Google document, but I popped it into there too. Email me and we can look at it. We can do a little trial and error together.
All right. Two questions, Nicole.
Bring them on. I'm ready.
All right. Where was the pull down again that you were using? And then two, what is the point of downloading to Excel?
I think that second question about what's the point really depends on the instructor. I do it once a term at the end for final grades. I literally use the Canvas gradebook the rest of the time. It suits my needs. I don't have anything external that I have to add in. And I've been an online learning management system user for a long time, so I didn't feel a breakup with Excel recently. For some faculty, I think it's maybe just that comfort of having a thing that you know rather than using Canvas. But if Canvas's setup is working for you and the math is working for you, and you know that because you've looked over those categories and you're feeling fairly solid, there's no reason other than your own records that you would need to download those. It's really up to personal choice and need. That drop-down menu for view, this is where you can decide how they're arranged within Canvas's limitations of what you can do. Filters will allow you to arrange by assignment group or by modules. And then you can, if you notice here on my gradebook, there's this thing that says columns. You can tell Canvas to allow or disallow a column for notes. So you can put notes for each student up at the beginning. And you can allow or disallow unpublished assignments to show up. And so if you have a bunch of stuff that you keep in reserve, you may or may not want to see that on this page. If it's unpublished, the students can't see it. And so you may or may not want to see that on your gradebook because it's just hanging out there. But I find that notes column really handy for being able to come in and make, you know, intermittent notes on my students. I'm nearing the moment when I'm going to want y'all to have a chance to chat with each other. So I want to check in. Any last questions about Gradebook as a setup? Shall we take a second to look at what students see? What feels good as our last stop on this train before you get a chance to chat with each other? Oh, Lucy, great question. Students can't, that's so the notes column is only for you. Only you see that as the teacher. Students do not see that. Laura, can you unmute yourself and tell me more what you mean about schemes so I know how to answer your question?
Okay. I work in nursing, so I have to, like, you know how the grade book has A minus, B. We don't do that. It's just straight A, B, C, D, F.
Yes.
And I have to take all of that out, and I have it's nursing. It's a nursing grading scale, and I put that in there. So I figured out how to do that one. So that way all my grades come out like I want them to. That's why I don't use the spreadsheet, and then I can just import them straight to Illusions for the final grade. But I'm going to be teaching a class that uses points because all my nursing stuff is weighted. So is there a way, like this class is, I think 240 points is the maximum for an A. How do I put that in the grading scheme? You have to go on the settings page and go down there and change it.
Yep.
But I'm not sure.
Yeah, it is under settings. Let me pull it up. I think it's on the settings page. Let's take a look. Let's go on the tour together. So on the settings page.
Okay. And then when you scroll down.
Yep.
Wait.
Here it is, grading scheme.
Right there.
Okay, so then if you click on enable course grading scheme,
then you can make your own.
And then you click set grading scheme. Yes, you can literally come in here and monkey with this. So, so you can decide, right, what constitutes an A, what constitutes an A minus, etc. So you could potentially, I don't know if you can, oh yeah, set another scheme. I may be getting the error message because of my school not wanting me to.
Okay, I just need to know how to do.
Well, it's because I'm in the fake class.
Okay, how to do points. Like, I know how to set it up with weights because that's what I do all the time. But I'm going to points now and don't know how to.
So, it's gonna, Canvas is gonna convert it from points to percentages before it gives students those final grades anyway.
Okay.
What I'm not sure about, and you might want to check with your Canvas magician on your campus, is I'm not sure if you can tell Canvas Gradebook not to convert their percentage score into a plus or minus, right? It's gonna translate that into a percentage, right? So it's gonna say like 89% to the student. I'm not sure if there's a way to get it to not estimate into a plus or minus there.
Okay. Well, I know the A plus, A minus, you all you do is X them out. And then it just gives you the straight grades.
So then when you go in to build your assignment, you get to tell Canvas how you want that to reflect.
Right.
So that's where you can go in. Whatever, you put the points in here, and then you can decide on this drill down if you want points, a letter grade, or not graded, or complete or incomplete. So you make that decision on each assignment.
Okay.
You can decide how it reflects.
Okay.
So then you would just go to points, and then whatever you put in here. Because honestly, if you were doing letter grade or percentage before, all Canvas was doing was taking the total points they earned against whatever points you put in here and reflecting it as a percentage or reflecting it as a letter grade.
Oh, okay. Okay.
It was just doing that conversion for you. So you can absolutely just choose points here. Yep.
Okay. Yeah. After I fixed it, it would, because it's already in the syllabus. So I literally take what's in the syllabus and translate it into that grading scheme so that all the weights come out right.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Gotcha.
Question, Nicole.
I've got Laurel. Is it Laurel's question here?
Yes. Yes.
Laurel, the cumulative in the grade for students, they're going to see their cumulative grade on their grade book. For you, if you want to see the cumulative grade, it's just scrolling all the way to the right. I think there is a way, and now I cannot remember what it is, but I think there is a way to get that cumulative to reflect closer to their name over here. But if you scroll your gradebook all the way to the right, this little scrolly bar at the bottom, and if you don't own a mouse for your computer, this is that moment where I would say the deeper we get into Gradebook, the more I will encourage you to spend $12 and get yourself a mouse, because it is much easier to navigate Canvas Gradebook. with a mouse than with a touchpad. But scroll that over to the right, and then you'll see your assignments organized within your groups, right? If you've built groups, and then you'll see that total over here. Again, remember, this is a fake course. My fake student is doing incredibly well in their fake course at the moment with a 283%. They can miss a couple assignments and probably be okay. Okay, I want their cumulative grade to look like total, not just that they see greater percentage for what they did. Oh, yes. Okay, so Laurel, I think the question you're asking is, what happens when a student maybe hasn't completed an assignment and that 0 has not applied yet? Is that right? Is that your question?
Yes.
Okay, so there's a couple different ways to go about this. And none of them, I mean, everything is a balance, right? And harder when we're online. If we were in face-to-face and we had a student who's not turning stuff in, you'd probably gently wander over to that student and say, like, I know you've missed the last 3 assignments. Let's do a math mock-up and see where that is, right? And facilitate that. And it's harder online. If you want students to know that not doing something is negatively impacting their score, you got to add a score in that category. And so if the due date for something has passed and they haven't submitted, you're going to want to put something in there. And what you put in there is really up to you. A 0, research tells us, is like an F-. It's an incredibly deep way to impact a student's grade for non-submission. So the research invites us to think about carefully using those 0s. They're not as motivating for student contribution as we would think. And perhaps reconsidering, as culturally responsive teaching suggests, creating a floor where non-submission and non-successes have the same value rather than a 0, right? So maybe thinking about non-submission as a 59%, which would be the same thing. It'd still be not passing, right? So it'd be the same thing as being really unsuccessful at something. So thinking about maybe creating a smaller gap between those two things, because when we give a student a 0, we're asking them to make up for an additional 59% of failure on top, before they're even going to come to the clearing with that 0.
I'm so sorry. I got lost in what you were saying. I teach drawing. If they do 10 drawings, they get the points for 10 drawings. But when they do 2 drawings and they look up their grade in percentages, what they see is 80%. They don't see 10% of their they look and they say, oh, I've earned 10%, 80% of what I need to pass this class. I'm not going to do those extra drawings. It
So
shows
you're using,
when I have it set up, so they look at, I have it all with points. Everything goes in with points. Big drawings are worth more, small drawings are worth less. I do it all under assignments when I put in the number of points. I don't weight them as groups. I just had to get in there and put stuff in. And I have like 55 assignments already in between 3 Canvas shells, or maybe 80 assignments. I mean, it's insane. And, I want it to look like, okay, they can look at the cumulative score, the end of the semester, and they go, oh, I've earned 30% because they missed most of the drawings. But what they see is, oh, I got a B on that drawing that I did do. I have 80%.
So let's go take a look at what it looks like from a student's perspective in the gradebook. Because I'm wondering if you've made each and every assignment its own individual assignment, like if you've got 10 drawings and each one is its own assignment, and you're entering a low score or a 0 when they don't complete something,
right?
They should be seeing that. They should also be seeing their cumulative grade. Now, one reason they might not is if you put something in your settings that says do not show their final grade. but it doesn't sound like you've done that. So let's take a look at it from a student's perspective and see if that helps. It's a fairly helpful exercise to do to see what that gradebook looks like. In my dreams, Canvas will do a much better job of making the gradebook work for students. It's not there yet by any means. So I'm now in this purple box. I got there by going to settings and choosing student view, or they've now made this new icon. I think it sits up on the right that looks like a set of glasses. And when I click that, it allows me to see what my students see to a pretty decent approximation within my class. And so what I can do in any class, because all classes have what's called a test student, is that I can come in my own class that's literally live. My students are in there. And I have a fake student in there called test student. Everybody does in every class. And so what I can do is I can put on these little glasses and turn my screen purple around the outside. And then I can submit an assignment as a fake student in my own class. That's really happening. And then I can go look at what that fake student has done and see what the gradebook experience looks like from their perspective. So, Laurel, your students should be seeing a percentage right over here on the right. When they come into their gradebook, right over here on the right, there's a total. Now,
they are there because I have things view by points, and I did not weight this section versus I've never known how to make groups until today, so that was very valuable. But I didn't weight it. I didn't say, oh, quizzes are with this and you know, discussions are worth that. It's like critiques are worth 10 points and drawings are worth either 50 or 100 or 200. It's very simple. So when I go in and maybe they did 2 of their drawings and they're seeing 80% at the top, or maybe they're looking on their cell phones. I mean, I'm getting like 5 students at the end of semesters, every single semester, who go, wait a minute, it says I have 80%. Sure. And I, you know, it's like, I want them to see the cumulative percentage, not, you know, like someone should not be able to get 160% in my class.
Sure. I'm wondering, so two things I want you to see, even if we took these out, okay? If we took out these weights, this score would still show here. The cumulative grade still shows to students. Nevertheless, you're bringing up a lot of things that are hard for students when they're looking on their phones. When I look at this gradebook, this is a ton of content to try and process without a lot of guidance. It isn't a student-friendly interface. So amongst other things, what I might suggest is you could do what we're doing right now, where you submit one of those drawings, you know, a fake drawing or a fake, you know, assignment, score it for yourself, make a quick video through Screencast-O-Matic or Zoom, put yourself into that student view and say, hey folks, this is what your gradebook looks like. Let's take a look. This is what you need to make sure of.
If you put 0, it doesn't register for them. If they don't do an assignment and they get a 0 points out of 50 points, they get 0. It's as if it never happened, and it's as if it's not part of the course.
That's so interesting. I'm reading Lucy too. Students who have not submitted an assignment don't see that it is a 0. And oh yeah, you got to add the 0. Yeah. It's not going to show. It's just going to show.
I do add a 0.
Okay. So maybe, I mean, again, to be respectful to folks' time, let's email. Let's look at it together. It sounds like there's something thorny about how that gradebook's set up that's really creating this impasse. And I want to help more, but I also want to be respectful of other folks' time. It should work. When it isn't working, that's a place for us to drill down together and look a little bit more closely. Because it's not about whether those categories are weighted or not. And Canvas is full of random boxes that get checked that can make things really frustrating for us as designers. And we don't know that something's going on and it's there. And sometimes it's a scavenger hunt to find those elements that are making our communication with our students not go the way we want them to. And I hear that passion in your voice. So I want to be able to help with that more. But I also want to make sure that folks have a chance to.
Just a quick comment, because I can't seem to get to my chat.
Sure.
That happened to me, and it has to do with the way you set up your assignments. So you need to go in and look at those little bins she was talking about.
So there's stuff under assignments that might do it. I mean, if for whatever reason there's a box check that says don't show, or if an assignment is muted, I mean, there's a number of different reasons why something might not show on the gradebook. And it's also hard to know what students are seeing and where they're looking. So some of this may also be a place of dialogue with those students to find out, like, where are you checking your grade? Because Canvas will send them a notification when something is graded, but I don't believe that notification includes their total grade. It's simply that assignment that they've done. So there could be a number of places, potholes on the road, where students are getting hung up as they look. So by all means, email me and we can set up a time to look more closely and find what is it on your particular setup in Canvas that's creating that barrier for your students to be able to see. I'd be happy to do that.
Thank you.
You bet. So folks, I'm going to bring us back. I'm going to encourage you to pop on down to page 15. And there's just a little table here. And with our last couple minutes together, I'd love for you to think about something you gained through the reading, something you learned through the modeling or through the dialogue with each other. Set those items on the left in the I got table, right? That makes it visible to you. It makes it visible to me and Rebecca as we're thinking about what folks are taking from these sessions. And then in the right-hand column under I need, questions, things, new resources, stuff that's now rattling around in the brain, maybe things that aren't answered yet, or something new that you're thinking about that you want to check out. So what did you get? What do you need? Sophia, I see your question and I'm checking my guides to see if there's one on hiding grades.
There is a way to hide them, because I learned that last summer.
Yep.
Because when I'm grading stuff, I don't like students emailing me in the middle of it saying, I gotta, why'd you give me these points or those points or whatever. If you go in the gradebook and hover over, there's 3 dots up in the subject. That's where you can change it to manual instead of automatically giving them a grade. And then once you've completed the assignment, then you just go back in there on grade policy and click post grades, and then it'll release all the grades.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the function that Laura is describing is, Canvas calls it muting a grade or manually releasing a grade. And so the how-to for that lives in a couple places in here in those guides. It's buried in that really big how-to guide. But there's also, I think, some information on it and how to exclude assignments from the final grade. So it's in both of those places. So what feels really tangible to me at the end of every time we launch this series, which we've done a few times now or pieces of, is that the overall gradebook session can feel helpful, and it can also feel unwieldy because there's so much. And because oftentimes we need 5 or 6 different things and they're moving in different directions. We need a little bit over here and a little bit over here. And so what I would encourage you to do is a couple things. One, be patient and kind with yourselves. right? And with your students. If something isn't working right away in Canvas Gradebook, that dialogue with your students can make a tremendous difference, right? Just opening up that space to say, oops, I posted this and I didn't mean it this way, or I'm still working out how to do this. Those ways of reaching out and connecting with our students that we've always done are still applicable, whether we do that through a Zoom call or a phone call or an email. We can still create that connection in a way that surrounds the grade and the gradebook, with a little bit more context and kindness from us. So those tools that you know how to do because you've always done them are still there, even if they're not translated into that digital format. So be kind with yourselves and know that it takes time, and that Canvas is not. I think somebody put it in our learning table earlier. It's not intuitive. It takes some time to get there, and it's not you if it's frustrating. It's a frustrating system to work with. The other thing I would encourage you to do, if you're available at this time in future weeks, come on along with us for the next 4 sessions. We're going to meet from 12 to 1:30 for the next 4 Thursdays in a row. And grading is kind of like an onion, right? We're going to peel back a layer and that may answer some questions, and then we're going to peel back another layer and that'll answer other questions. Because ultimately that grading success for your students is often a relationship between what you post, how you comment, how you use the features within Canvas to give feedback, right? Ways in which you integrate peer review. I mean, there's a number of different factors that can help kind of surround the student with opportunities to demonstrate their knowledge and then get feedback, and those work together to create a strong relationship for your students. So if you've got the time, we'd love to see you. And thanks to those who sent emails. And if you've got questions and you want to connect and we can do a screen share and try and figure it out together, email me at 3csn.com and I'm happy to make a time. We'll make it happen. That's what I have for you today. Other than that guide of guides through the Google Doc. If you're looking at that Google document and it's not yet happened for you, up on the top, oh, I can show it too. I haven't done it on mine yet, so I can show you. Up on the top of the Google Doc, you'll see 3 icons. One's a cloud, one's a folder, and one's a star. Oh, on yours, maybe one of them looks like a recycle symbol or a triangle. If you click that recycle symbol or triangle, basically that paper clips it to your Google document, so it's easier to find again. So you can paper clip it right up there, revisit it as you need. I hope the rest of your Thursday is sunny and smooth, and you don't have too many Zoom meetings. And I hope you'll join us next week. We'll dig in more.
I'm sorry, Nicole. Where's the thing that I can save this? So
You
I can
bet.
get the links.
You bet. So if you scroll up to the top of that Google Doc, your icons are going to look a little different than mine. Instead of a star, you're going to have a recycle symbol. It's either the farthest to the left in the choices to the right. Sorry, that's a lot to say. The farthest to the left in the choices to the right of the title, or it might be in the middle spot. But if you're looking
okay,
way
I
at
have
the
a
top,
star and a cloud with a check mark
and does the thing look like a triangle? Is the third one like a triangle?
Look like the Google Drive.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
If you're like me, you've got 3,500 things in Google Drive, and finding where your stuff is really tough.
Yeah, I do.
So that'll help it stay findable on your Google Drive.
If I want to then in my Google Drive, I want to duplicate it and give it a new name and change the content and repurpose it.
Yep. So you go File and you go Make a Copy. And then it'll make a new copy. It'll have the same name, but it defaults to putting your cursor in that spot. And then you can retitle it.
Great.
And I'm not sure if Google knows when you make a copy that you still want to be able to see it. That seems intuitive, but that doesn't mean it happens. So if you do make a copy and you have those icons at the top, and one of them is the recycle symbol, it's still worth it to press it, because I feel like I've made copies of stuff before and then I can't find them later.
Right, I just did that and I
Yep.
couldn't find it. It's like
Yep.
it didn't exist. So when you
Yeah.
duplicate it, how do you find it?
So if you make a copy, you file make a copy, it's going to take you to this page. And then you can just retitle it, whatever you might want to, you know. I got song lyrics in my head. Here we go, Summer in the City. Okay. And then you just hit okay. It's going to make that copy for you. And then what you'll want to do, I was the maker of this, so it defaults to saving it in my drive, but just check on those icons up at the top. If there's one that looks like a triangle or a recycle symbol in that new tab it creates, just make sure to check that so it pins it to your Google Drive.
Wait, you click in the triangle and then what?
Once you've clicked that triangle, that tells Google to make it easy for you to find that document in your drive.
So you conceivably could put it there and you never find it again unless you do that right away.
Or if you remember the exact title and you can find it, it can be challenging. So just defaulting to clicking that little triangle, make sure that it quote unquote pins to your drive easily. Yep.
Okay.
The hallways of Google are long and wide and cluttered with who knows what. So It's helpful to tell it to stay easily visible like that. Yep.
Thank you.
You bet.
This was great. Thank you so much.
You bet. And email me, Laura. We'll figure it out. We will find the answer.